Well, this topic, I just want to kind of express my frustration with a certain kind of social behavior that I've always been aware of, but recently at work I've had to deal with more. And that, well, let me introduce by saying what I've noticed. So I'm out here at the oil well, and we basically live in a trailer, and it's not a bad trailer. I mean, we have beds and flat screen TV and kitchen, and it's really. I mean, if I had to live in a place like this, it'd be all right. I wouldn't want it next to a oil derrick. I'd want it, someplace quiet. But it's not a bad place to stay, and obviously you get paid, and room and board is free, and all that. But the the part of the potential problem is that you live with a coworker. There's two of us who live here, and obviously we're around each other basically 24/7 now. One or the other of us is probably asleep much of the time, but there's no getting around that we're by each other. And uh, I'm I've always been pretty fortunate that I get along with the people I've had to work with. Some more than others, but never had any big problems. And that's of course the risk that you run in something like this is you'll be with somebody who is, um, that you don't get along with. And I get along fine with this guy, but he's from Texas, which isn't necessarily bad. I've lived in Texas, and not everyone there is stupid or evil. I made a lot of friends at a Ron Paul meetup group, and they seemed like good libertarians and whatnot. And most of the cliches about Texas, I think, are actually, like that they're pro gun or whatever. I actually like those. But he does have certain characteristics that I know are not Texas specific, and they really bother me. And they manifest in two or three major ways. And in general, what I want to call this, it probably has a name, is he draws enormous vicarious satisfaction from the deeds of others uh, that I find extremely disturbing, actually. And the number one expression of this is his love of sports, especially football. He is a huge, huge football fan. I don't know if I've known one who was this big. It's possible I did, and I just didn't see them on a game day or something. I've never been much of an athletic, uh, you know, I've never really enjoyed sports that much. Um, in fact, you might say when I was younger, I kind of despised them. Now, occasionally I've enjoyed watching certain games. In my region of Michigan, actually, hockey is very popular. My brother plays hockey. And actually, I did like watching those games sometimes, although it was usually kind of cold. And uh, I'm sure I have relatives who really like sports. But anyway, he is a huge football fan. And to the point where he was asking if I would work an extra 4 hours that he would make up so that he could watch a game. And I was like, sure. And so I was up working, and he's in the other room watching. But watching is not the right word because he was standing and yelling and smacking the wall and cussing and calling idiots. And his emotional engagement was unbelievable to me. And I know that, I mean, I hadn't witnessed it firsthand like this. I was aware of that kind of reaction. Uh, I knew hypothetically it happened, and I'd heard of it happening, and I actually am pretty certain it's not that rare. And the thing is the guy I work with, he's fat, he smokes, he's not an athlete. He's just this guy who, and it's weird. How can you take? It's one thing to look at something as entertainment and to enjoy watching something. I don't have a problem with that. That doesn't bother me. I don't think there's any kind of psychological problem for somebody to enjoy something or to take an interest in it. I certainly do that for certain things. If I watch a Superman cartoon, I don't think that I'm Superman or that feel like I'm a tough guy because Superman beats somebody. I don't particularly like Superman. I'm just using that as an example. But for him and for sports fans in general, and this doesn't only apply to sports. I'll get to that in a minute. It's like his identity is wrapped up in if the team does good, he's doing good. If the team does bad, he's doing bad, and he's part of the team in some very very oblique way. He says he donates money. I don't. He's not a shareholder, so he's not part of the team. I mean, if he was a shareholder and they were paying him dividends, I might understand that. You know, like the owner of an NFL franchise, you can certainly understand, even though he's not a player. Well, he's got an interest in it. I can understand him being mad if they win or lose, or if they get a certain player. And this guy, he spends. I mean, he ridicules me because I spend all my time reading books, but he spends all his time reading, but it's football stats. And I'm like, what? That has no relevance whatsoever. It's a fucking game. But he's totally invested in it, and this kind of I don't understand. I mean, if he wanted out and played on like a club team or something, that would make a lot of sense to me. And if you won a game at that, that would make a lot of sense to me. Even if you're not winning the Super Bowl, if you're just doing something you like and you do a good job at it, that's great. But to feel like you've accomplished something because the team you watched did well, that doesn't make any sense to me. And of course, it's not always so innocuous as this, because the other big one is people feel this way about the government and the military. I don't know how many people feel like when the military wins, like they're awesome because of that, and that doesn't make any sense. And he's obviously a warmonger, an ignoramus warmonger, like all warmongers. You know, there's this tiny intellectual elite who do know something about what they're talking about. They just have that. But the vast majority of people who support war, they just want to root for a football team. Except this time it's the U.S. military, and instead of scoring touchdowns, it's killing people and butchering people. And it amazes me there because I'll actually read books about the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, about Al Qaeda, about terrorism, about the military in general, about history. And he scoffs at that. He scorns that. And yet he totally supports every war. He doesn't know shit about. I mean, I tried to talk to him about Afghanistan, you know, and I was talking about the Taliban. He goes, "Well, aren't those the ones that we supported?" And I was like, "No, no, no. You're thinking of some of the Mujahideen." And he's like, "Well, yeah, the Taliban and the Mujahideen are the same." I'm like, "No, they're not. Taliban didn't even exist until what 5 years after the Soviets left. No, they're all the same towelheads. What? I mean, I dare not ask if you knew who Muqtada al-Sadr was, or the Ayatollah Sistani, or Maliki, or Ahmad Shah Massoud, or you know Mullah Omar. I mean, these are like the main people, but he doesn't know who they are. But he still has an opinion that we should be in the war, which is weird. You know, how can you be a proud ignoramus and then still have a strong position on a subject? You know, there's lots of things I don't know very much about, and I don't have strong opinions on them. You know, like like the whole quantum mechanics. I don't have a strong opinion on that. I might find it interesting. Maybe I've read a thing or two, but I'm not about to put my foot down and say we should tax people to go and kill other people because I believe in this so strongly, but I don't really know anything. Yeah, he feels content to do that, and uh, I think the vicariousness and the sports, I think that they are related somehow. I know Alex Jones and some of his documentaries, and I know Alex Jones is a guy who makes a living making documentaries, so he's not necessarily the most rigorous scholar, but he does believe that the athletics are specifically designed to, uh, I don't know, condition the masses somehow. Now, historically, I guess this is not without precedent. The most famous example would be the gladiatorial games in Rome, although I do not claim to know the degree to which those actually were able to, or what effect they actually had on politics. I'm sure it was something. I don't know what it was or how, probably wasn't quite like the movie Gladiator. Uh, and I don't see, well, I know that the U.S. military is like one of the biggest supporters of and involved with military. You know, they always have the planes flying over, and I mean, even some of the commercials. I see beer commercials. What is that? Like, we're gonna honor the Iraq War veterans or whatever by giving them free beer or whatever. It's just disgusting. Um, but I really don't understand though this vicariousness. If you don't accomplish something, but you watch a team that does accomplish something, how does that make you a better person? Go fucking lift some weights. If you ever got into shape, maybe I might respect you. If you, even somebody who, like I said, even someone who, they don't have to be a pro athlete, but if they just do a good job playing on some local hobby team, that's fine. That's great. That's commendable and laudable. But to think that you're all that because your fucking alma mater beat their rival this year, that doesn't mean. I mean, you can have fun and watch the game, but to think that that makes you successful, I just don't understand. I know this is not just an American phenomenon. I think it might even be worse in Europe with the soccer. I mean, from what I can tell, which isn't that much, I guess. So, uh, this isn't really a declarative video. I'm just kind of asking, like, what's the deal? Why is this? What's this? I don't understand. There must be some kind of evolutionary psychology involved here. Maybe that's redundant because isn't all psychology going to be evolutionary? But what purpose could that possibly serve to uh, vicariously draw uh, succor from the actions of others? That doesn't, to me, seem to offer any kind of uh, material benefit at all. I mean, it's one thing to watch others and to learn from them. That certainly has advantages. But to feel good about yourself because of the accomplishments of others, that doesn't really make any sense. Uh, Obviously, this, in a broader nationalist sense, this is the whole, oh, we beat you. I mean, how many times you think Americans say that to, Germans or French? These are Americans who were born after World War II, had no part in it. Even most of the people who were in World War II didn't fight, and but somehow their accomplishments are yours. That doesn't make any sense. Like, you should have your own accomplishments and take pride in them, not point to others and say, "Oh, look, I'm great because other people did something." That just doesn't make any sense, and it's really annoying to me. Now, am I going to wage war on him to stop him from taking vicarious pleasure? No, no. And I'm not even going to try bother talking to him because we're just in a work environment. I don't want to get involved in something like that. I like to keep it pretty low key unless it's somebody who already agrees with me on something. But I don't know. I see it a lot, and I don't think it's innocuous. I think it is a problem, and I don't know where it stems from. I don't know. You know, I don't think it's so sinister as Alex Jones would say that there's a secret government bureau that's trying to get people to watch sports. I don't think that. I mean, obviously some of the big teams get subsidies, but I think that's just normal government trying to point at something that it's done and say, "Look, we did something. Vote for me." Uh, Although well, I don't know, maybe. I don't think there's any. I don't think it's that deliberate, but it's also like and this is the other interesting thing. I've said this before. I think if 1/10 of the intellectual and emotional uh, expenditures that go into sports went into politics, we'd have a revolution like tomorrow. All the people who spend all their time looking at stats and watching ESPN and whatever, and getting all worked up about who got traded to who and who got injured and who scored the most. If even like 1/10 of that went into, I'm going to read some books about political philosophy or whatever. Learn about fucking economics or examine the government's claims or have any kind of serious thought, we'd have a revolution. It just seems that way to me. Maybe it's more than 1/10, but that's just my take on it. But we don't, and I know part of it is there's a disincentive, there's rational ignorance when it comes to politics, because you can spend all your time studying, and your vote still counts the same as every other Yahoo. So it doesn't make sense to vote on anything other than emotion. But I'm not just talking about voting, because the government affects our lives to the negative, like all the time, and it makes sense to learn about them. Just like it makes sense to learn, like if you live in Alaska and there are black or grizzly bears all over the place, it makes sense to learn about, the grizzly bears like salmon, so maybe you shouldn't smoke a whole bunch in your kitchen with the door open without a shotgun. It makes sense to learn about grizzly bears when they threaten you, and the government threatens us, so it makes sense to learn about it and to understand how dangerous it can be. How dangerous it can be, not necessarily always is. Government could round people up and throw them into cattle cars and liquidate them. I'm not saying they're going to. I'm saying that it could. It could. And so, since that's possible, you should be aware of that, and you should think about that, and you should maybe consider the possibility that that might happen and what you might do to either prevent that or what you might do if that happens. I know that's, to me, like the main reason to care. The intellectual theoretical stuff is interesting, but there's a real world reason to look into it, is to know what you're up to. Because if you're just one of these idiots, I mean, this is what happens: is the government starts killing people, and a big part of the population, or not even that, even in war, they don't realize how dangerous it is, and so they are reckless. I remember there's a movie with Mel Gibson called Gallipoli. I haven't seen the whole thing. I've seen parts of it, and it's about World War One. And he's in Australia, and their father is some kind of very adventurous person who traveled the South Seas and had been attacked by pygmies and pirates and all kinds of stuff. And they're saying, Mel Gibson and his friend are saying they want to go to war because it looks like fun, it looks like adventure. And to them, all they imagine is that it's going to be this blast, this big party with a whole bunch of their mates. And the dad is adamantly against it, and they don't understand because, as far as they can tell, he was this adventurous guy who spent a lot of time risking his life. And they say something explicitly like, "Hey, you've told us you've been almost killed, a dozen times." And he just looks at them and he says, "War is different. When you're in war, you're a fucking slave, and you have to do what you're told. When I'm on my own, if I decide the pygmies are about to kill me, I run away or I try and lie and get out of it. It was when you're in the military and they tell you to get out of your trench and charge the other trench. If you don't, they'll kill you." And so it's not to say there aren't other risky things, but the government is much more dangerous. And so many, how many innocent, or not innocent, but, well, maybe innocent, how many delusional people uh, thought it would be no big deal, that they'd be relatively safe, and they didn't understand the magnitude of the risk that they were taking, either by joining the government in the military or just by living in a society with the government. Who knows? It's probably most of them who get killed are that way. I highly doubt that most of the people who join the military and get killed had any kind of realistic appraisal of what the government is. I highly doubt it. Less, they probably wouldn't have joined the military enthusiastically, even. I mean, even if we're talking about a draft, a lot of people say it's all just joining. They don't realize that, and so it's, but it's a little tangential. But and then you have those same people who spend hours and hours and hours going over linebackers, or I don't even know the terminology because football is so uninteresting to me. But I don't know. It really bugs me. I don't know why it is. If there's a reason for it, I'd like to know what it is. Uh, I can't imagine a reason why it would be beneficial. Maybe it's not genetic. Maybe it's some kind of social construct. Although I tend to think basically everything is a fusion of the two. But I don't know. What do you guys think?